You know, they say your life can change in a heartbeat. Mine did. The day I walked in on my wife, Linda, getting a little too cozy with Alex, our so-called personal trainer. The scene was like something out of a bad movie. My own living room turned stage for a betrayal I never saw coming. I'd come home early from a business trip, thinking maybe I'd surprise Linda. And boy, was I surprised. There they were, Linda on the massage table, Alex's hands more personal than trainer. My heart dropped to my stomach, and for a moment, I couldn't move. I wish I could tell you I handled it coolly, but let's just say my reaction was loud. Linda jumped up, wrapping herself in a towel, babbling some nonsense about it being just a massage. Alex, that smug look on his face, didn't help matters. I didn't buy her story for a second. Call it intuition or the look of guilt in her eyes, but I knew this was more than a harmless rubdown. So, I turned detective. I started watching her, noting her calls, her texts, her sudden late nights. The pieces started to fit together like a puzzle I didn't want to solve. Linda and Alex, it wasn't just a fling. This had been going on for months, right under my nose. Enough was enough. I hired a private investigator, a real-life sleuth straight out of a noir film. He tailed them, clicked pictures, collected texts. The evidence he brought back was like a punch to the gut. The photos, their messages, it was all there in black and white, proof of their affair. Confrontation time. I remember my hands shaking as I threw the photos down in front of Linda. Her face went white, then red, then white again. The argument that followed was explosive. Accusations flew, words that couldn't be taken back were said. She tried to explain, to justify, but every word felt like another betrayal. That chapter of my life, it felt like a tornado ripping through everything I thought was stable. But you know what they say about tornadoes, right? They tear things down, but they also clear the path for something new. That's where my story really begins. You ever watch your entire life get flipped upside down? Well, let me tell you, it's a heck of a ride. There I was, staring at Linda as she cried and begged for forgiveness. But after what I'd seen, what I'd learned, forgiveness felt like a foreign word. So, I did the only thing that made sense to me then, I filed for divorce. The divorce. Man, that was a circus. Linda, with her tear-streaked face, actually had the nerve to ask for a big chunk of our assets. Can you believe that? After everything, she still wanted a payday. But I wasn't about to let her walk away with half my life. That's when things got interesting. My lawyer, a real shark in the courtroom, did some digging. Turns out, our dear friend Alex wasn't just a personal trainer with wandering hands. He had a history, a con artist in gym shorts, seducing wealthy clients. Knowing that made every memory of him in our home feel like a scam. Word gets around, doesn't it? Especially in our little circle. Soon enough, everyone knew about Linda and Alex. Her reputation took a nosedive. Friends we'd had for years suddenly turned cold shoulders. I almost felt bad for her. Almost. When the dust settled in court, I came out on top. The judge must have seen right through Linda's crocodile tears. I got a favorable settlement, way more than I initially hoped for. Linda? She was left with a fraction of what she wanted. Guess karma has a sense of humor. And Linda, she moved in with Alex. A part of me wondered how long that would last. A guy like that, with a track record of loving and leaving. But hey, it was her life now, her choices. I had my own path to tread, one that didn't include her anymore. So there I was, starting over. New beginnings, right? But as I watched the moving truck drive away from what used to be our shared life, I couldn't help but feel a twinge of something. Regret? Relief? Maybe a bit of both. Life's funny that way, isn't it? One minute you're planning a future with someone, and the next, you're just trying to figure out how to move on. Life, you know, has a funny way of teaching lessons. Just when I thought I had seen it all, I stumbled upon something that flipped the script again. Alex, Mr. Personal Trainer, Mr. Steal Your Wife, was at his game again. This time, playing Linda while cozying up with other women. Did I feel bad for Linda? Maybe a little, but mostly, I felt like she needed to know the truth. So, I did something I never thought I'd do. I helped Linda, in a way. I sent her an anonymous package, loaded with photos and texts of Alex's escapades. No note, no explanation, just cold, hard evidence. It felt like returning the favor, you know? The fallout was like watching a storm from a safe distance. Linda confronted Alex, and all hell broke loose. Their little love nest turned into a war zone, words flying like bullets. And just like that, they were done. Linda was out in the cold again, only this time, she'd burned her bridge with me. Then came the knock on my door, the one I dreaded but expected. Linda. Eyes swollen from crying, voice trembling. She was asking, no, begging, for another chance. But some things, once broken, can't be fixed. I told her that. Told her we were done, for good. Watching her walk away, I felt a mix of relief and this heavy weight in my chest. Turns out, the affair and the scandal hit Linda harder than just emotionally. She lost her job, the fancy title, the big office. Word spreads fast, and not many companies want a headline maker in their ranks. Last I heard, she was living in some small, rundown apartment, working a job far below her qualifications. It's funny how life works. You play with fire, you're bound to get burned. But hearing about her struggles, I didn't feel the satisfaction I thought I would. There was no joy in seeing her fall so hard. I guess, deep down, a part of me still cared, or maybe it was just pity. Either way, Linda's downfall was a stark reminder of how quickly things can change, how quickly we can lose everything we've worked for. So there I was, living a life I never expected, watching from the sidelines as Linda tried to piece hers back together. It was a chapter I never anticipated writing, but one that taught me more about life, love, and consequences than I ever wanted to know. In life, some chapters close just as new ones open. That's where I found myself, caught between moving on and looking back. While I was picking up the pieces of my life, Linda was out there, trying to stitch back a tapestry that had unraveled beyond recognition. I heard through the grapevine that Linda was reaching out to old friends, the ones we used to host dinner parties for, the ones who laughed at our jokes and envied our life. But the welcome she hoped for? It never came. Doors were closed, calls went unanswered. The queen bee had lost her hive. Meanwhile, I was writing a new chapter of my own. There was someone new, someone who brought light into the shadowed corners of my life. It was different, refreshing. I found happiness again, something I thought I'd lost for good. But with every smile, every shared moment, there was this twinge of sadness, a reminder of a past that once held a different promise. Then came the day Linda saw me with her. I noticed her from the corner of my eye, that familiar figure, a ghost from another life. The look on her face, it was like a mix of surprise, pain, and something else. Regret, maybe? It was a fleeting moment, but it spoke volumes. Not long after, I took a leap of faith again. I proposed to my new girlfriend, and she said yes. We were ecstatic, announcing our engagement to the world. It was a new beginning, but I couldn't shake off the thought of how this news would hit Linda. Turns out, Linda tried to make a comeback in the social scene. She showed up at a party thrown by a mutual friend. I wasn't there, but word gets around. They said she walked in with her head held high, but the whispers started as soon as she entered. People can be cruel, and forgiveness can be a rare commodity in our circles. At that party, Linda overheard the snide remarks, the thinly veiled insults. I heard she tried to mingle, to laugh, to fit in. But you can't force people to forget, can you? She left early, alone. They said she looked defeated, like someone who realized they'd lost much more than just a husband or a status. That night, lying in bed, thinking about everything, I realized something. Moving on isn't just about finding someone new or starting over. It's about coming to terms with the past, with the choices we've made, and the consequences we've faced. Linda and I, we were on different paths, each dealing with our own aftermath. I found a new love, a new hope. Linda, well, she was still searching, trying to find her place in a world that had turned its back on her. Hey everyone, I hope you're enjoying the video so far. If you do, please take a moment to hit that like button. It really helps me out and lets me know you appreciate the content. Also, if you haven't already, consider subscribing to the channel. Subscribing is a great way to stay updated with all the latest videos and to be part of our growing community. It's quick, it's free, and it ensures you won't miss out on any upcoming content. So go ahead, smash that like button and hit subscribe. Your support means a lot and keeps this channel going. Thanks for watching. Life's a whirlwind, isn't it? One moment you're down in the dumps, and the next, you're planning the wedding of your dreams. That's where I found myself, alongside my fiancé, caught up in the bliss of tying the knot. We were planning something out of a fairy tale, a lavish wedding, the kind you see in magazines. Everything was set for a day to remember. Meanwhile, Linda was on a different journey. Heard through the grapevine that she was trying to start a small business. Gotta give her credit for trying to pick herself up. But the world of business is tough, and from what I gathered, her venture was struggling to find its feet. Part of me felt for her, remembering the ambitious woman she once was. Then came the big day, my wedding day. It was everything we'd hoped for and more. A grand affair with laughter, dancing, and a sense of a new beginning. Amidst the celebration, a little drama unfolded, unbeknownst to me at the time. Linda, in a moment of what I can only guess was desperation or maybe some twisted sense of closure, tried to crash the wedding. She didn't get far, though. Security turned her away at the gate. It's strange, isn't it? How life brings you to these bizarre crossroads. When I heard about her attempt, a mix of emotions churned inside me. Anger, sure, but also pity. To think she'd come to this, trying to sneak into a celebration she was no longer a part of. I wondered what she hoped to achieve, what went through her mind as she stood there, being asked to leave. Word of the incident spread like wildfire, as things tend to in our circle. Rumors about Linda's attempt to crash my wedding buzzed through the crowd. I could see the looks of shock, the hushed whispers. It was the kind of gossip that fuels dinner party conversations for months. In the midst of it all, as I stood there with my new wife, surrounded by friends and family celebrating our union, I couldn't help but reflect on the journey that brought me here. Life's full of unexpected twists and turns. There I was, starting a new chapter, filled with hope and happiness, while Linda, the woman I once thought I'd spend my life with, was out there somewhere, lost in her own struggles and mistakes. It's funny, in a not-so-funny way, how our choices carve out our paths. As the music played and glasses clinked, I realized that this was more than just a wedding. It was a milestone, a marker of change, not just for me, but for Linda too, in a way she probably never anticipated. You ever have those moments where your life feels like a movie? That's what my honeymoon was like. Picture this. Me and my new wife, sipping cocktails on a beach in the Maldives, the kind of luxury I never imagined during those dark days. It was bliss, a well-deserved break from all the chaos and heartache. But while I was living it up, life was dealing a different hand to Linda. I got the news right after coming back from paradise. Linda, struggling to keep her head above water, was now facing eviction from her apartment. Rent unpaid, dreams shattered, life crumbling. It was a stark contrast to the postcard-perfect scenes I just left behind. The image of Linda being evicted haunted me, even amidst the successes and joys in my life. There she was, the woman I once shared a home with, now without a roof over her head. Last I heard, she'd moved into a cheap motel, a far cry from the life we once lived together. It was hard to digest, seeing someone you once cared about fall so far. It's a weird mix of feelings, you know? Here I was, my career taking off like a rocket, married life treating me better than I could have dreamed, and yet, the news of Linda's plight cast a shadow I couldn't easily shake off. It was like watching a ship you once sailed on sinking into the horizon. A part of you feels relieved you're not on board, but a part of you can't help but feel sorry for those who are. But life has to go on, right? I found myself focusing on my work, my wife, our future together. We were building something new, something beautiful. There was this sense of stability, a kind of happiness that felt real and deserved. My days were filled with meetings, projects, successes. My evenings? Laughter, love, and plans for what was yet to come. Through it all, I couldn't help but reflect on how life's paths can diverge so drastically. Once, Linda and I were on the same path, dreaming similar dreams. Now, our roads couldn't be more different. It's strange how choices, moments, can lead you to such different destinations. So, there I was, living a life that once felt out of reach, while Linda, well, she was fighting battles of her own, trying to find her footing in a world that seemed to have turned its back on her. And while I wished her no ill, I knew her struggles were her own to face, just as my triumphs were mine. You know, they say life is a roller coaster, but nobody talks about watching someone else's ride from the sidelines. That's where I found myself, observing the downward spiral of a person I once knew so well, Linda. After all the drama, all the heartache, I heard she reached out to her family, hoping for some support, a lifeline. But turns out, bridges burned in the past aren't easily rebuilt. Her family, still stung by her actions, kept their distance. I couldn't help but think about how life's twists and turns bring us to moments we never expect. Linda, once the life of every party, the center of our social circle, was now reaching out to friends, acquaintances, even distant contacts, asking for financial help. It was a tough pill to swallow, knowing someone who once prided herself on independence was now reduced to this. Then came the news that hit me harder than I expected. Linda's health was on the decline. The stress, the poor living conditions, it was all taking a toll on her. Hearing about her suffering, the sleepless nights, the health issues, it was a stark reminder of how quickly fortunes can change. Despite everything, despite the anger and resentment, I couldn't just stand by and watch her life crumble to pieces. So, I did something I never thought I would. I sent her money, anonymously. It was a strange feeling, part relief, part resignation. I wasn't doing it for gratitude or forgiveness. It was about doing what felt right in a messed up situation. It's funny, in a not so funny way, how life makes you question your choices, your actions. There I was, living a relatively comfortable life, while Linda was battling demons of her own making. Sending that money, it wasn't about rekindling anything or opening old wounds. It was about humanity, about acknowledging that, despite everything, we shared a part of our lives, and that part, no matter how tainted, still meant something. So, as I went on with my life, with its ups and downs, successes and challenges, part of my mind often wandered to Linda. Where was she? How was she managing? These questions lingered in the background, a subtle reminder of the complexities of human relationships and the unpredictable nature of life. And as each day passed, I found myself reflecting more on the concept of responsibility, not just for our actions but for the aftermath they leave behind. Sending that money to Linda was a decision that came from a place I didn't know existed within me. It was about closure, perhaps, or maybe about peace, not just for her, but for me as well. Life's a tough teacher. It gives the test first and the lesson later. That's what I kept thinking about as I heard bits and pieces of Linda's current chapter. She used the money I sent her, though it was just a drop in the ocean of her troubles. Paid off some immediate bills, maybe got herself a decent meal for the first time in ages. But it was clear she was still skating on thin ice, her life hanging by a thread. Then, a glimmer of hope, or maybe just a flicker in the dark. A former friend, someone from our past life, offered her a job. It wasn't glamorous, far from the high-flying career she used to boast about. But when you're drowning, even a straw seems like a lifeline. I heard Linda took the job without a second thought. Desperation does that to people, makes you grab onto anything that looks like a way out. She was starting from scratch, a fall from grace that I wouldn't wish on anyone. When I got wind of her new gig, I didn't know how to feel. There was a part of me that was relieved she wasn't out on the streets, but another part, maybe the one still nursing old wounds, couldn't help but feel that this was some cosmic justice. But then, who am I to judge? We all have our ups and downs, and right now, Linda was climbing a steep hill with a heavy load. As she tried to rebuild her life, piece by shattered piece, I heard it wasn't easy. The past has a way of clinging to you, like a shadow you can't shake off. Everywhere she went, whispers followed. People we once called friends looked at her with a mix of pity and disdain. It's a small world, especially when you've fallen out of favor. And me? I was moving on, building a life I was proud of, but the news of Linda's struggles always cast a bittersweet shadow. There's no joy in seeing someone you once cared about, someone you once shared a life with, struggling to make ends meet, to find a place in a world that's turned its back on them. Linda's journey, her fight to stand up again in a world that seemed bent on keeping her down, it was a stark reminder of how quickly things can change. One day you're on top of the world, and the next, you're clawing your way out of a hole. It made me think, really think, about the choices we make and the paths those choices set us on. Life's not just about the big moments, the wins and losses. It's also about the small steps, the quiet battles we fight every day. And as I watched from a distance, I couldn't help but hope that Linda would find her footing, that she'd rise above the whispers and the judgment, and find a new path, a path to redemption. Life, I've come to learn, is a series of chapters, some closing as others open. My latest chapter? Becoming a father. My wife and I, we were over the moon. The joy, the anticipation, it was like a bright new beginning, a stark contrast to the stormy years that lay behind. But as we prepared for our new arrival, the echoes of the past still lingered. Linda got wind of the pregnancy. The news must have hit her hard. I can't say I understand entirely how she felt, but I imagine it was like watching a train leave the station, one you were supposed to be on. Then, the moment that changed everything. We welcomed our baby into the world. Holding that tiny bundle of life, I felt a wave of emotions: love, hope, a fierce desire to protect. It was a new bond, a new journey, a definitive step away from a past that once consumed me. Meanwhile, Linda's life took a darker turn. Her health, already fragile, began to deteriorate further. The stress, the hard living, it was all catching up with her. Work became a struggle, something she could hardly manage. It was heartbreaking, in a way. Life has a ruthless way of coming full circle. As I cradled my child, watching them sleep in the quiet of the night, I couldn't help but reflect on the choices we make, the paths they lead us down. Linda, once a part of my life, now a distant memory, was living the consequences of her choices. Alone, unwell, the shadow of the person she once was. And so, the story winds down to its inevitable conclusion. Linda, sitting alone, perhaps reflecting on the life that could have been. Me, embracing a new chapter, with all its joys and challenges. It's a tale as old as time: actions and consequences, choices and repercussions. Cheat, and you lose everything in the end. That's the moral of this story. A lesson learned in the hardest way. Life doesn't pull punches. It hits hard, and it hits where it hurts. But it also teaches, molds, and shapes us. In the end, we're left with the truth of our choices, the reality of our actions. This chapter, this part of my life, it's about moving forward, carrying the lessons of the past, but not its burdens. It's about new beginnings, new responsibilities, and a new understanding of what truly matters. In the quiet moments, I often think about Linda. I hope she finds some peace, some solace in her journey. But my path, my focus, is here, with my family, my child. It's a path of honesty, love, and hope. A path I chose and one I walk with a clear conscience.